bringing us to the present, where we have controversies over history and textbooks. So how do we end up being at peace with these diverse histories? And there is really a diversity of histories here. I'm often reminded about this little quote that says, whoever controls the past, if you control memory and history, you control the present. And if you can control the present, you can control the flow and influence the future. Which is why perhaps knowing our history is extremely important. And is there such a thing as a correct history? No. It's always partial, as Dr. Cheah said. It's a partial. There's always an other, the missing other. But one has to appreciate that rather than insisting that this is the official version of history, or this is the history. So I'll leave it there. The floor is now yours. Any questions, please?
I don't remember you mentioned the role of people like Bostamam, Dr. Burhanuddin, Helmi, and so on, as Malay nationalists. They may have been leftists, but don't you think they were also fighters for Malayan independence, just like Chimpang did?
Of course. In fact, the late Dr. he gave recognition to the Malay leftists, to the leftists. He says, besides UMNO, MCA, MIC, the alliance leaders, he said others who struggled for independence were the Malay Nationalist Party and others. So I think he did give recognition. And the other one who gave also was the late Tun Dr. Ghaffar Baba. In his USM, at the time when I was teaching USM, we conferred a degree on him. And in his speech on nationalism, he paid tribute to the leftist movement. Of course, at that time, even right now, the left movement includes the MCP actually. It's a very broad term, the left. So Tun Ghaffar and Tun Ghaffar Baba and Tun Dr. Isma gave recognition. So actually when you look at it, the Malay leaders, UMNO leaders, they do recognize. But somehow this hasn't gone into the Malay school textbooks. So official history has to take note of all these. Although they do mention Putra MCJ and so on. They do mention Ibrahim Yaakob. The early KMM, they do mention. So, as I said, your point about Dato, Ahmad Bostamam and others, they have recognized that.
But another question is, it's more of a clarification. You said, this is specifically, I'm referring to Sarawak now.
Sorry, CD, speak into the mic, please.
Yes, all right. I'm speaking to the mic. I don't know really, I agree with you that North Borneo part, Sarawak was colonized from 1841 to 1941. I would say Sarawak was not colonized from 1841 to 1941 because Sarawak had its own independent group, Raj. The fact that there was in 1888 the British sent the British consul, and in the same year, United States of America recognized Sarawak as an independent state, albeit run by a family. I would agree that from 1946 until 1946, 1963, then Sarawak was a colony for only 17 years. After that, the rest is history. Am I on the right track or just?
Well, it is debatable, but anyway, as I say, the very fact that Brooke used the British Navy for many of his suppression activities on the Daya and other rebels, Sharif Mashor, the acquisition of territory from Brunei, always with the help of the British Navy. And you must realize that Britain was an imperial power, and Brooke was a subject, British subject. And in his many of his statements, he said he was always subservient to the interests of Britain. No doubt he offered Sarawak to the British government many times, but they did not take it. But that did not mean that indirectly he did not serve British imperial interests. So now, if you say that it did not was not colonized until 45, what about 1888, when Britain made the Sarawak a protectorate with North Borneo and Brunei? When you are a protectorate, you are no longer independent actually. You are under defense and foreign affairs, defense were under Britain. You already lost your independence, many of your independent powers. Prior to that, maybe yes, you can argue that he had some sovereign powers. I think he always had. Britain did not challenge that. But the very fact that he served imperial interests would put him into the category of colonialism actually. There was exploitation, you see. There was exploitation. You cannot deny that, you cannot say that he was such a benevolent and benign ruler that he did not suppress the people there.
Well,
I think those who opposed him were suppressed. You must admit that.
So this is a very good example of good history being contested history.
Because at one stage, James spoke before that, he even wanted to sell Sarawak to Belgium. So how could British be to sell British colony? So I'm talking, strictly speaking, there are of course ingredients of exploitation, but very little in the case of the Brooks. They had no doubt, because he himself had a problem, James Brooke had a problem with not being recognized as a British private ruler in foreign country until he got knighthood.
No, another point I probably need to point out to you is that during Brooke rule, all the time the British Colonial Office was surveying Sarawak to make sure that he did not sell Sarawak to any other foreign power, European power. And he was always writing to the British Colonial Office and informing them what he was doing. And when he went back, he would always go and see the British Secretary for the Colonies. So, it was, private, as a private citizen, he was still a British subject.
Yes.
I think you must bear that in mind. You cannot divorce this. So Britain was quite happy because you have a citizen there. And Britain doesn't have to pay money to rule, but he can rule on behalf of Britain, you see. And the British Navy would always call there. So he was looking after British imperial interests actually.
Okay.
So indirectly, even then, he was an agent of British imperialism.
So I must come in here because this can go on and give space for others. Anybody else? Yes, Valerie.
Thank you.
And where you see oral history as people's history as evidence, particularly as you said, and I'm not sure whether you meant this, that the novel is a factual account.
No, I didn't say that. I said that the critics who complained about the novel interlock, they treated the novel as a historical account. They treated it as a historical account. So here you have a case where it's not a novel, fiction. Because it had negative references, it had quotes of how Indian laborers conversed, how they were drunks. According to these Indian critics, they depicted the Indians in a very bad light. So and it was pointed out to them that this is a novel, a work of fiction. Why do you take it so badly? I mean, why do you take it as a historical account? So they wanted all these negative parts to be deleted. But a novel is a complete work of art. You don't just delete it. You can't. Probably what they could have done, they could have asked the Ministry of Education to remove it as a text and substitute another novel. So here you see that there are people blurring the lines between fiction and history. Instead of looking at it simply as fiction, they take it as if it's a historical account. And so they were very upset by it, because they said, oh, thousands of students are studying this, and they are going to have stereotypes of Indians and Chinese as drunks, as inveterate gamblers. So you must change this. You cannot change a novel like that. So, as I said, the blurring of the lines, this is very common in deconstruction history. And Professor Anthony Milner regards it as, he says it is very inclusive and sympathetic. You see, you have a historian, a professional historian, treating it as if it's a historical account. You see? Not me. It is Professor Anthony Milner treating it as a historical account. And this is the postmodern condition. There are historians like David Irving who regards the Holocaust as not happened, didn't take place. And here you have Professor Anthony Milner saying what is a novel is an actual depiction of events. In fact, he has written a lot about that. He says there's no difference between fiction and history. He's arguing along those lines. Not me. I repeat that. I'm not saying that. As evidence, especially for within the kind of a context of a contemporary period, you can still get a lot of evidence, but you can't go very far back. Like maybe 70 years, 60 years. You have people still who can remember events. You can use the evidence. That's acceptable actually. And increasingly, oral history is very popular. And ethnic history, much of ethnic history today is oral history actually. You have a lot of ethnic personalities, leaders of ethnic communities giving their accounts, telling of immigrant life, of village life, and so on. So certainly, it is a very important source of evidence for history. Actually. I have used that for my research. I wrote on the peasant robbers of Kedah in 1927, 1900 to 1927. At that time when I went for my field research, there were a lot of villages, old villages, who could tell me stories about bandits. I was interested in banditry, peasant banditry. So that book is largely based on oral history.
I think I'm pleased to learn today that there is a deconstruction in our Malaysian history. I think it's good because it helps to put pressure on the commonly acceptable assumption, such as Merdeka and communism. Now my question to you, I have two questions for you. Number one, can we claim that the trend in revisionist history runs parallel with the democratic trends in our society, democratic movement in our society, that's number one. Number two, I think in 2010, Cheah has written a revisionist sort of account of what happened. Yes, correct. So, as a historian yourself, what do you think? Can you give a comment about his approach? I think he refers to the British colonial intelligence, British intelligence as a source of this. And do you see that? Can we consider that as a revisionist account of history? Thank you.
You see, the history, as I stated earlier, is partial. It is never complete. It's never. It's not. You cannot have a complete history of anything because, let's say you finish an account of an event. In time to come, there will be other versions. There will be evidence coming out on this event, which was not available to the researcher at the time he or she was writing. So, of course, when the new evidence comes, or rather the latest evidence appears, you have to revise what was already written. So history is continuously revising itself, actually, or historians are doing that all the time. So revisionist history is a continuous thing. Historians do that all the time, actually. And of course, each time when they get new evidence, they're very excited. They say they're going to revise whatever existing accounts of, say, the May 13. But then you see the May 13 incidents, there are a lot still which have not come out. Because it's so confidential, so sensitive. Many of them are under wraps. If you go to the archives, they will not, there are a lot of topics which are still very sensitive. They are called they will be classified under the Official Secrets Act. But what we get are only what Cheah got was only from the British Colonial Office records, the secret confidential papers. But that doesn't tell the story, it never does actually. So, but your point that revisionist history occurs, yes, we all indulge in it, and but it's not the end, it's not total, it's not complete. So what was the other point again, the first point?
I asked you if we can claim that there is a relation between what we do and the academic revisionism and what happened in civil society.
The link between revisionist history and democratic transition.
Yeah, there are 2 points here. One is, of course, you see, here you're also talking about research, academic research, and usually because it means within the confines of, or rather within the university community. And I would say that within the university academic field of research, of course there is freedom. I mean, although at one time when I remember, in 1978, there was this, I think it was an attempt to censor academic research and writing. All writings had to be, before we embark on research or we have written research papers, we had to inform the Vice Chancellor. So that caused an uproar, and in the end, the Vice Chancellor himself realized that he would be swamped with a huge pile of papers. Is he going to go through every one of them? And is he an expert on every subject? No way. So he said, no, I don't want this. He told the Minister of Education, why put the orders on me? So, and he was, our Vice Chancellor was Tun Hamdan then. Of course, other Vice Chancellors also got worried because the workload was already heavy as it was. And here was the Minister of Education trying to make him censor all the works. So in the end, nothing was done, and of course, we were allowed to do whatever research we wanted. I mean, nobody tells us what paper we can write, what conference paper we can go to, submit. No more. Since then, it has never happened. Now, revisionist history, we can write revisionist history. Nobody tells us what to do in the university. But when it comes to the curriculum, it's a different matter. There is such a thing as an official history. And if you want to revise or review that history, the Ministry of Education will control it. So whether some of this revisionist history will get into the Malaysian history textbooks, that is debatable. And again, you have a commission of government officials and historians, of course, working together. But usually, my feeling is that the official history will not. There is always a political element to it. There's always a political element. I was on the review committee once. I can tell you that the political agenda is there, and it's very difficult to get out of that. So hopefully they are more open. Your point about democratic society, yes, good point. Whether they're going to be very open and frank and transparent, accommodate everybody's sensitivities, so that everybody has equal share and place in the Malaysian history book. There is an ideal that we can work to. Hopefully, it will come about.
I think if history is contested, democratic transitions are also contested. I beg to disagree with you, Dr. Cheah, very quickly before we open the questions. In 1997, when there was a major haze, this Jerbu problem in Sarawak, when the index went over 800, the Vice Chancellor of this university then issued a memo saying no university academic could make any comment about the haze to the media. Yeah. So this is where and this is unknown history, because later they kept the memo, and every time before an election comes, there's memos coming up about how academics cannot go and campaign. Meaning actually only if you are supporting the opposition. If you support the other side, you can go and campaign. So, yeah, these are all unknown histories. So, history is full of heroes and heroines. It's the victors the victorious people who write the history. But okay, anyway, other questions?
For the very enlightening presentation, I would like to ask about the Hang Tuah history. I'm really interested to learn that if I recall that Professor Khoo Hee Kim has published in two New Straits Times saying that there's no evidence of Hang Tuah existence. So how do you think about this? Is there actually any evidence on it, or it's just a made-up story or anything? What do you think about this? Is your opinion?
Yeah. Well, it is true. I think I would support the emeritus professor's point that there is no documentary evidence to show his existence. I mean, there are no Portuguese records. Portuguese, when they took over after the fall of Malacca, they were very interested in getting the history of Malacca. Many of their officials recorded the history and published them. Tommy Perez, of course, I think many of you know his work, Summa Oriental. He wrote, but he never mentions Antoine. Also, Afonso de Albuquerque, in his memoirs, the Comentarios, he never mentions Antoine. But what is interesting is that he mentions a Laksamana inside. Who this Laksamana is, not known. Because he said when after the defeat of the Sultanate, of the Sultan and his forces, he said Laksamana and his fleet came up to the river Muar and wanted to negotiate. He wanted to come back to live in Malacca. he said he would be prepared to give loyalty to the Portuguese. So Afonso de Albuquerque gave him a pass, a safeguard pass. He said, you can come. He sent an emissary to meet this Laksamana, but this Laksamana never came. So who this Laksamana is not mentioned. Now, of course, there is also papers, letters written to the Ryukyu Islands. The Ryukyu Islands are in actually Okinawa, which is now part of Japan. The Ryukyu was a kingdom. They had a king, and they used to send out merchant ships to Malacca and to Southeast Asia. So there was a letter. Of course, the Ryukyu kingdom paid tribute to China. Every year they would send mission tributes to China. So in the archives in Okinawa, there are 2 letters written by a Laksamana from Malacca. But unfortunately, the name of the Laksamana is not there. It's written in Jawi, but he just signed Laksamana. So who this Laksamana is not known. It could be Khoja Hassan, another Laksamana. Khoja Hassan was a later Laksamana at the end of the reign of Sultan Mahmud. Could it have been Khoja Hassan? Or could it have been Thang Tua? But there's no evidence of that.
Which
Dr. Khoa, in his book, May the 13th, has quoted Sotilatif, has quoted that there was in fact a rebellion or a kind of revolt within the Malay community by the so-called capitalist, emergent capitalist Malays against an autocracy. Now, that Dr. Khoa could have got this from his, because it is obtained from the British sources, but there's a declassified information. What do you think is it? Is it a fact or just imagination?
Yeah, I think that you see, diplomats they always write reports back to their posted to tell the government what's happening. Of course, they pick up a lot of reports. They are in touch. Many of them, diplomats, are in touch with police. They keep in touch with police. Sometimes, they give cocktail parties on their national day or on some function or other, and they invite all these people. They invite ITP, they invite the director of special branch. So they make friends, and they get a lot of information. And you see, this point that you raised actually has been mentioned by Tunku Rahman. Because Tunku, in the interview with K. Das. Andrew, can you remember the Andrew Das?
Yeah, that's
What is it called?
tapes, Raman tapes.
What papers are they called?
Okay, that's Raman tapes.
The tapes. He mentions the Tunku said what you raised just now. So actually, this is also reported in the British intelligence papers. So again, just because you have a confirmation, it may not be. It may be just a kind of suspicion. Maybe, I don't know. It could be the real thing. It could be what the Tunku felt. It was a plot to really talk with it. And of course, the Tunku's relationship with Tun Abdul Razak was always a cordial one, but of course, but the Tunku knew that Tun Razak was cultivating a group of UMNO leaders who were very critical of the Tunku, like Musa Hitam, Abdullah Ahmad, and a few others, whom later, of course, Tun Abdul Razak raised to ministerial level or deputy minister. So he knew that Tun Razak was having this group of people around him. So whether it really culminated into a plot to overthrow him, but you see, there's no evidence of that in that sense that he, or I don't know what, he in his book, May 13, Tunku said that he decided that he would let Tun Razak head the NOC, National Operations Council. See? But he remained as Prime Minister, he did not relinquish his powers. So, but he wasn't toppled in the sense that he was removed. Later on, of course, he relinquished his powers. But so this is still a mystery. We don't know the full story yet.
I think one of the challenges of history is to first get evidence, second, to counter-check or to triangulate that evidence with other facts of other sources, and third is, of course, interpretation of the facts. So, which brings me to my million-dollar question, since nobody else is asking it. Why is history so militant, and why is it so dominated by men? What happened to the women? I'm really embarrassed you didn't ask this question.
You know, feminist history is, of course, Andrew, you know that feminist history is now one of the genres that have really taken on, you know, this life actually is quite flourishing, productive kind of field now. A lot of women, and also men, writing about women's roles in history. And I have written about Malay queens and court ladies in Malay history in the Journal of the Malaysian branch of the Royal Asiatic Society. Actually, if you all are interested, just look it up. To show that women power behind the throne. Di belakang tabir, women played a very powerful role in the Malay kingdoms. In fact, even in the Malacca Sultanate, they were very powerful. They were involved in court politics. They poisoned kings by, in the food. The kings ate, they poisoned the food. And you have all heard of Tun Fatimah, right? How she disliked Sultan Mahmud for killing her husband and her father. But anyway, he wanted to possess her so badly. So, when he killed them, he killed her husband and her father and other relatives. He took her, as his wife, and she refused to give him a child. Every time she conceived, she aborted. So this was a weapon of the weak, weapon of the weak, actually. So until he finally told her, look, why are you aborting every time, I promise you, if you give me a son, that son will be killed. So finally she But anyway, these are stories which I collected. You find that there are a lot of stories like that to show women power, the role of women in Malay history. It's not true to say that they did not play a role in
Yeah, but why is it so neglected?
Well, you are right in the sense that because most of the scribes were males. And not many, I think in terms of education, female education those days, not many were highly educated. But fortunately, many of the scribes, the male scribes, they did record the role of the women. So you find that many of these women were power holders. They played crucial roles. So their historical accounts do capture the activity.
And why is history so warlike, so militant?
Well, I suppose the accounts deal with kings and the struggle for power. And therefore males were involved, so many accounts about warlike activities got recorded. You know, of course the heroes are always the male heroes, you know, who were able to win victories for the kings as well. Of course there are accounts of women warriors as well in Arab history a lot. In fact, if you read Herodotus' account in his voluminous book Histories, there are so many queens who fought in battle. Greek and Persian accounts. Very interesting stories. I mentioned some of them in this article on queens and court ladies. How when they won a battle, they would capture, they would take the body of the king that they had defeated and cut off his head.
Sounds good. Any other question, please?